In Indiana, they're trying to put some murderer to death. His name is Gary Burris. Gary Burris, and it looks like they're going to put him to death. Everything looks good for his execution. Of course, there are people protesting, a bunch of wimps, and there are people trying to stop this, but it looks like he's going to be executed. That's the good news. The bad news is it won't be painful. Now, Indiana has had really a great history of painful executions. In fact, here in this state, I have to ask, Chris is here, they use the electric chair. Is that right, Chris? The electric chair. They use the electric chair to put murderers to death. And now, liberals have their way. Now, this will be, according to the South Bend Tribune, today's paper, the first Indiana inmate to die under the state's new lethal injection law. Lethal. So it's going to be, he's basically just going to snooze off to eternity. It should be scary. It should be painful. It should be terrifying. So it'd be a deterrent. But anyway, so they had in Indiana, they had the electric chair. Now, thanks to the liberal, now we have a lethal injection. And I guess if liberals continue to have their way, eventually the next death row inmate will probably be softened to death in a tub of Jergens lotion. That's, I imagine, where they're heading. Just fill that thing up and let them soak there. Let them soak there until, nope. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. It's supposed to be a deterrent. It's supposed to be scary, painful. It should terrorize criminals. Isn't that what the New Testament says? Something about the government being a terror, not to people who do good, but a terror to people who commit terrible crimes. That's what the government should do, according to God. But we have people who think that they're more loving than God, more merciful and wiser than God, and they say, oh, you shouldn't say that. Don't even, hush your mouth, don't even say that. Nowadays, what happens? If let's say you're in prison, right? If a prisoner murders someone in jail, what do they lose their free HBO for a month. That's it. Lose HBO for a month, then back. Everything like normal. Pretty soon, you ever see that Monty Python show years ago? I guess it's still on with cable, some places. I remember the Spanish Inquisition. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. And they come in and they get somebody and they say, let's put him in the comfy chair. No, not the comfy chair. And they put the guy in a comfy chair. No, don't do this. And then they say, now we'll get out the soft pillows. And they give the guy some soft pillows. That's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. Monty Python stupidity comes to pass in America. All right. So, what else do we have here? So this guy, there's about 20 people are demonstrating against his execution. They don't want him executed outside the governor's home. They're hoping the governor will put a stay on this execution last minute. Hopefully the government has a spine, and he won't do that. The protesters included members of this guy's family, the Black Panther militia, and Amnesty International. The only ones missing were Motley Crue. I mean, what kind of a group is that? I don't understand what kind of group that is. But anyway, they were there. They were there. Let's see. Actually, the members of the family were not this guy's family, apparently, but the last guy who had been executed in Indiana, which goes back to December of last year. So it's been a year almost. Got to speed things up. All right, what else? One person who was opposing any mercy whatsoever for this Burris murderer guy, that's June Chambers. Guess who June is? June is the mother of the victim. The mother of the victim. And she was there at the parole board, and she heard these liberals whining and complaining about this guy's childhood. And don't you realize no one loved him when he grew up? And he grew up in these terrible surroundings? Oh, brother. I mean, not that none of that is not true, but if we can establish that if you grew up in terrible surroundings, you could basically get away with murder, then what are we doing? We're giving people, say, well, if you had a bad childhood, you could murder your boss. You could murder your wife because there are liberals in official positions who will wink at it. Anyway, we got to be hardcore about these folks. How am I getting these calls? Alice here, I'm going to go to Mike here in a moment from Bering Center, Michigan. Nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but that's all right. We'll take Mike's call. Looks interesting. So when this guy, Kenneth Chambers, was murdered at age 31, he left 2 children and a wife who had just been diagnosed with cancer. She died 5 years later, leaving 2 children as orphans. This guy should suffer on his way to Judgment Day. That's what should happen to that guy. All right. Aren't you tired of people saying, oh, you should forgive him? If you're thinking that right now out there, whoever you are out there thinking that you should forgive this person, I have one question for you. Are you God? Because if you recall, only God can forgive sins. You can't do that. You can only forgive someone who murders you. So if you get murdered and then you want to forgive the guy, go right ahead. But you can't forgive someone who murders someone else unless you're God. And God explicitly commanded us, our government, to never forgive, never show mercy, no pity for criminals, but punish them. All right.